Leo had always been up for an adventure. As an experienced hiker with some epic stories to his name, he'd tackled mountains, crossed deserts, and explored jungles. All for his adventure blog. But deep down, he wanted something more. Mystery. A thrill he hadn't yet chased down. So when he heard about the forest known for its mysterious echoes, it felt like the perfect backdrop for his next post. The locals tried to warn him. They had their share of unsettling Talus hikers hearing voices, whispers of people vanishing without a trace, but Leo brushed these off as just local legends meant to scare off thrill seekers. Who wouldn't want a spooky ghost story for their blog? The locals tried to warn him. They had their share of unsettling tales. Hikers hearing voices, whispers of people vanishing without a trace, and an eerie sense of déjà vu that lingered long after leaving the forest's edge. But Leo brushed these off as just local legends meant to scare off thrill seekers. Who wouldn't want a spooky ghost story for their blog? With his camera slung around his neck and his journal packed away, Leo headed out, eager to capture the beauty and intrigue of this haunted forest. At first, everything seemed normal. Birds chirped, and the forest felt alive, buzzing with energy. The echoes were subtle. Just a rustle here, a faint laugh there. He barely noticed the voices at first, attributing them to the sounds of nature. But as he pushed deeper, those echoes grew sharper and more familiar, creeping him out. He tried to rationalize it. Must be the forest's weird acoustics, right? But something in him started to doubt. The sounds didn't seem to come from anywhere specific, they just hung in the air like ghostly whispers. Still, he shrugged off the unease, telling himself it was all in his head. Hours passed, and daylight began to fade, casting the forest in a spooky dim light. The once clear path felt tangled and endless. Shadows stretched longer, merging with the mist that clung to the ground. Leo could feel an odd weight in the air, like the forest itself was closing in on him. He noticed small changes, paths that hadn't been there before, and landmarks that seemed out of place. Then the voices started. Faint, whispering fragments of conversations that sent shivers down his spine. At first, there were snippets of laughter and murmurs in a language he couldn't quite grasp. But as he walked on, they grew clearer, more insistent. Some were calls for help, chilling in their desperation. Others were softer, filled with regret and quiet confessions, as if the forest held the burdens of the lost souls wandering within it. Feeling unnerved, Leo tried to retrace his steps. But every turn led him deeper into the maze of twisted trees and thick underbrush. He started to panic, and he quickened his pace, desperately searching for something familiar. Just then, a voice echoed in the distance, stopping him in his tracks, his own voice, faint but unmistakable, calling out from deeper in the forest. "Stay away from the tree with the twisted branches." His voice warned, cutting through the mist like a cold wind. Leo looked around, half expecting to see someone, but there was only silence and darkness. His heart raced as he tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just an auditory illusion. But the words were too clear, too real. Against his better judgment, he decided to heed the warning, changing direction whenever he sensed his voice echoing nearby. Yet the forest seemed to have a mind of its own. Every turn, every step forward, pulled him further away from escape. As he ventured deeper, he started noticing other signs, a broken branch here, a faint trail there. Evidence of those who had walked this path before. Were they as lost as he was? Or were they still here, trapped in some strange limbo? And then he saw it. The tree with the twisted branches, just like his voice had warned. The tree was gnarled, its limbs reaching out like skeletal fingers. He couldn't shake the feeling he'd been here before, though he knew it was impossible. As he listened, faint whispers floated around him. A younger version of himself, digging up memories he thought he had buried. Childhood regrets, forgotten dreams, moments of courage and fear all resurfaced, playing back like a nostalgic mixtape. The forest was more than just creepy, it was like a mirror reflecting his life back at him. It dredged up emotions he had long ignored. Confused and increasingly frightened, Leo realized the forest wasn't just messing with him. It was revealing parts of himself he had never confronted. As night fell, the weight of the forest grew heavier. His flashlight barely cut through the darkness, and every shadow felt alive, shifting around him. The voices grew louder, more urgent, warning him of an unseen danger closing in. His own voice from the future broke through the chaos, clearer than ever. It was frantic, pleading, warning him about something he couldn't quite see. A sacrifice must be made to leave. The voice echoed, filled with a despair that chilled him to the bone. Don't ignore the signs. The loop must be broken. Leo struggled to make sense of it. A sacrifice. What loop? He felt trapped in a nightmare he didn't understand, and every instinct told him to keep moving, to escape before it was too late. Then, among the jumble of voices, another sound emerged. A younger woman's voice, calm yet insistent. Follow the echoes backward, she urged. It was odd advice, but Leo had no choice. He turned around, trying to retrace his steps, though every path seemed to twist and warp as he walked. Yet he kept going, listening intently to the voices, allowing them to guide him. With each step, he felt like he was piecing together fragments of his own life, memories surfacing with haunting clarity. He began to hear moments he had pushed aside, regrets he hadn't acknowledged, conversations he had forgotten. Each echo felt like a piece of himself left behind in this forest, waiting for him to reclaim it. The voices weren't just sounds. They were echoes of his past, of choices he had made, of everything that had led him to this moment. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Leo stumbled out of the dense trees. But instead of the trail he expected, he found himself in front of an old cabin, its walls covered in strange symbols he didn't recognize. It felt oddly familiar, like a dream he couldn't quite remember. Inside, dust and decay hung in the air, but on a small table in the center lay a faded journal. His initials were scrawled on the cover in his handwriting. With shaking hands, he opened it. The entries were disturbingly familiar, recounting experiences that mirrored his own, warnings about the forest's pull, and a chilling realization. I have been here before. The last entry was a frantic note to himself. The loop is real. This forest isn't just haunted, it's a trap, a cycle that keeps repeating. I am both the echo and the one who hears it. Break the loop. Remember, follow the echoes backward. Those words hit him like a ton of bricks. He finally understood. He was caught in a cycle, forced to relive this journey over and over. And worse, he knew he would eventually become the echo, calling out to a future version of himself, forever guiding and warning, but never breaking free. As he turned to leave, something caught his eye in the trees. A shadowy figure, just on the edge of his vision. Squinting, he realized with horror that it was himself, lost and confused. Hearing the same haunting voices, a chilling sense of determination washed over him. He was no longer just Leo the hiker. He was part of the forest, an echo destined to haunt the next Leo who wandered in. And though he walked out of the forest that day, he knew he would one day return, meant to guide the next version of himself in an endless, timeless cycle.